The 2024 Polyglot Gathering is brought to you by Glossica.
Okay, hi guys, welcome to Manju, a crash course held by Iskandar.
Hello everyone. So today, I didn't know this, and we're very honored to be joined by a Mongolian person, native Mongolian speaker. And as I will explain later, Manju has very close ties with the Mongolian language, as well as some other languages in the Altaic Sprachbund, not language family. And Solo can check the pronunciation and everything. Everything I'll explain later. No matter what your reasons are to be here today, thank you very much for coming. I didn't expect so much interest. And today the format will be, I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. I'm not a native speaker of Manchu. I'm not of Manchu descent. I learned Manchu over the last year to read official documents of the Qing Empire, or the Qing dynasty who ruled China. And as many of you already know, it's an endangered language. We don't actually know how many native speakers or revived speakers there are, but it's largely not a spoken language by the sort of younger generation. And in terms of the correct pronunciation, we don't really know. Unfortunately, we didn't have recordings from the beginning of the Qing Empire, but we can sort of guess based on Mongolian pronunciation. Right. I'll try to make this thing a bit interactive, so I'll ask you questions, to repeat sentences and to ask each other questions. But first things first, what is Manchu? I saw the statistic of 10 native speakers, and that was on the Chinese website, and that came out in 2015. Again, not many people know. There are many Manchus in China as one of the major ethnic minorities or minoritized ethnic groups in China. But the majority of of the ethnic Manchus do not speak the language anymore. The reasons are complicated. Has to do with Chinese history, and also how the Manchus came to China, ruled China, and they had to sort of assimilate linguistically to the local population. But there has been, over the last 10, 15 years, a revivalist movement within ethnic Manchus to sort of relearn the language of their ancestors. And many of them learn the pronunciation of their elders, so like grandparents, great-grandparents, and that accent is heavily Sinicized, and the grammar is also heavily Sinicized. There are also people who try to reconstruct and reproduce the original pronunciation, which would sound a little bit more like Mongolian. So Manchu is a Tungustic language, which in early, let's say, 20th century, late 19th century, early 20th century linguistics was included in the so-called Altaic language family, i.e. sharing genetic relationship with Turkic, Mongolic, Japanese, and Korean, and sometimes people even include Finnish and Hungarian. But now that language family has been debunked. There are many similarities between these languages, and I think the best way to call them, best way to describe this phenomenon is to say that these languages form a Sprachbund, like a Eurasian steppe Sprachbund. It is written in an adapted Mongolian script. What that means is that if you know a little bit about the history of scripts in North Asia, the traditional Mongolian script, which has been retained in the what is called officially as Inner Mongolia in China, Southern Mongolian, by a lot of Mongolian activists, but sort of semi not official, although quite active in Mongolia itself. that is the script that was devised from the old Uyghur script before the Uyghurs converted to Islam, and that script ultimately came from Syriac via Sogdian. The Manchu script was invented in 1599 by two guys. One of them was called ᡮ᠛ᠨᠵ, the other one's called ᡮᠰᠨᠠᠮ. And then it was revised later by someone called ᡮᠰᠰᠠᠾ, who, because the Mongolian script actually is not phonetic at all, and there's a lot of discrepancies between how you pronounce things and how these are represented by the script. When Manchu was first invented, it was kind of like that, and then it was adapted to better represent the sounds. So there are diacritics to mark consonant differences and so on and so forth. And that is the script used by most of the Qing documents. And it was the national language, or in Chinese, 国语, of the Qing Empire, which ruled China, and not only China, Tibet, Vladivostok as well, and then Xinjiang, and much part of the Pamirs. So China was in fact the same entity as a lot of these things which have been inherited by the People's Republic. Of course, it was co-official, to use it, let's say, anachronistic term, with Mandarin Chinese at the time. And so it would be imprecise to say that Manchu is dead or severely endangered, because there's a variety of Manchu closely related to the standard Manchu spoken in just there. That is the Chapuchal Xibe Autonomous County of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. And the Xibe people are a Tungustic people. They were closely related to the Manchus, but they were not included in the Manchu tribes by Nurhaci, who was the first emperor of the Qing Empire. Therefore, their language is not recognized as Manchu, but in fact, it is very, very close to Manchu, and that is still being actively spoken in that little area. And this map I found on Wikipedia just shows the extent to which Tungusic Tungusic languages are spoken. Most of them are severely endangered and spoken in central to east Siberia. So who are the Manchus? Here's a very, very short history on the Manchus. The Northern Asian people, Northeastern Asian people, the first time the ancestors of the Manchus created any sort of state or country was in the end of the 7th century to the mid-10th century. And at the time, they were recorded by Chinese historiography as Mohe, and they created the polity called, in Korean it's called excuse my pronunciation, I speak Korean, Palhe, and I suppose the native pronunciation would be Bohe. So in Mandarin, it's called Bohai, Bohaiguo, and that bordered Silla, which I suppose was the precedent to Korea, and bordered Khitan. And they were this polity was defeated by Khitan and sort of disappeared. And the next time the Manchus, or let's say proto-Manchus, emerged was in the form of Jurchen people, Nuzhen in Chinese, or Jushen in modern Manchu, who created, who kind of conquered huge swathe of land from all the way there to kind of central east China and bordering the Song dynasty of China. And this polity was called the Great Jin, so 大金 in Chinese, and that was in the 12th to 13th century. And the next time they emerged in history, they emerged gloriously as the ᡤᠾᠨᠠᠨ, which was the official designation of what Westerners called China from the mid-17th century to all the way to the beginning of the 20th century, when the monarchy of China was toppled, and the and the Republic of China, which is still the official designation of Taiwan, was created. And the Qing Empire, as I mentioned before, covered a lot of the territories we are familiar as nation states these days, extending all the way to the Pamirs in the west, and in the east to Vladivostok, and in the north to Mongolia, and all the way to Tuva, and the south, as you can see. And the orange parts marks the how do you call it, countries which were loyal to the empire, and the dark yellow is the traditional understanding of China. In Chinese, people call it 汉地18省, so the 18 provinces of Han China. The light yellow marks territories which are not traditionally recognized as being Chinese, but nevertheless, at the time, part of the great Qing Empire, the Manchu Empire. The Republic of China and afterwards the People's Republic of China, which is the polity that rules China now, have largely inherited this territory, just like, in West Asia, what is now the Islamic Republic of Iran has inherited largely the territory of the Qajar dynasty. And this happens when, nation states are created and they sort of inherit sort of territories. So a lot of China's political issues and border disputes and so on and so forth, the ethnic minority issues, stem from this demarcation and this understanding, territorial understanding of what China is. A lot of people think that it actually started with the People's Republic of China in 1949. It goes way back when China, let's say, and Mongolia, Tibet, Xinjiang, and so on and so forth, were ruled by one empire. So obviously, the Qing Empire was very important. Being the last imperial dynasty or imperial entity that ruled China is very, very important in Chinese history. A lot of documents during the Qing, because Manchu was the national language, the majority of documents were written twice. They were written in Chinese and as well as Manchu. So there are discrepancies between these two versions. They were not perfect translations of each other. So in order to understand what happened in modern Chinese or pre-modern Chinese history, you really have to know Manchu, which is not a skill that a lot of historians have these days. And that shows you that, I suppose, the importance of Manchu, of learning and knowing Manchu. Here I've got a picture of these are not signatures. The 知道了 means, oh, I have understood this, or in Russian, понятно. And you have the Manchu version next to the Chinese version. So when emperors read documents, they had to sign it. They had to sign the documents, usually in two languages. Saha, which is the Manchu word for I have known. A lot of people know that, in a lot of these languages, Turkish and Uyghur and Mongolian, you don't really say I know, because that action of knowing happened. So you actually use the past tense. like in Chinese, 知道了, the le is it signals recent past. In Manchu, it's the ha suffix. Saha, 知道了, that's how they sign. We have three emperors, the portraits of three emperors here, Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, and who represented the height of Manchu imperial civilization. Manchu is an agglutinative language, which I'm sure a lot of people know, and the structure is very, very similar to all these languages, and you can literally do a morpheme level mapping of Manchu with these languages, and you get a perfectly formed sentence. Obviously, it's closer in terms of logic to Mongolian, and the Manchu nobility and Mongol nobility intermarried for centuries. And the characteristics of Manchu include consonantal harmony and vocalic harmony, so consonant vowel harmony. Let's say, so vowels are divided into, in very plain terms, soft vowels or hard vowels. So if you have a vowel a, that is considered to be a hard vowel. So a consonant like k will never go before it or after it. It's the consonant k that goes with it because it's a hard consonant. But if you have a vowel that's considered, in Mongolian grammar, that's considered the feminine vowel. I'm not going to use that term. Like a softer vowel, and that would never go with k. That goes with k. In the script, that particular consonant, the velar consonant is reflected, but oftentimes in transliteration it is not reflected, because vowel harmony and consonant harmony are things that happen very, very naturally to our mind. A lot of people who learn Turkish think that, oh, it's so difficult because you've got 4 different varieties of the endings. Actually, that's not true, because there's only one variety. If the previous vowel is a u, then you are not going to expect an e in the end, apart from in loan words. So that's very natural. Keep that in mind. We're not going to learn the script today, if the time doesn't allow. And if the time allows, I will introduce the script, but probably that's not part of the plan. It has an SOV word order, subject, object, verb. Obviously, with these languages, word order can be quite flexible, but the base word order is SOV. And or in linguistics, head final. The verb, the Manchu verb, does not conjugate according to person, which is similar to Mongolian, Japanese, and Korean. Dissimilar to with Turkic, and I think that's due to the Indo-European contact of Turkic. So that's easy, but it has a very rich system of tense and aspect. Many of these tense and aspect concepts do not correspond to European languages. Just as it shows here, this literally means I know, if you want to translate idiomatically into English. I suppose understood as well. So you would use a past tense to show a sort of present action, and very often past tense to show future action. Very similar to the Mandarin. If you want to say I'm leaving now, you don't say I'm leaving now. You say I'm gone, 走了, and that I suppose is due to the influence of Northern Asian languages. Similar to an extent Russian as well. You don't really say, I'm going now. You say, well, let's go, поехали. No, I think people here who speak Russian, that's a past tense. And I think there's a lot of, let's say, linguistic interaction there. So that's an example of how it doesn't aspectio temporal categories don't really always correspond to those in Western European languages. And it has a system of verbs do conjugate according to how you feel about a situation. Let's say if you ask a question, you will tend to use a form of the verb which shows your doubt and uncertainty. But if you ask a question with uncertainty verb ending, that expresses a different meaning, that sort of thing. And there's a rich system of converbs. What that means is, for those who are not in linguistics, is that you very rarely see that conjunctions in these languages. You wouldn't say and. You would put all the verbs, let's say in the serialization of verbs, you would put the verbs in converb form. In Manchu it would be m. And then in Turkic it would be b. So like m, and you conjugate the last verb. And in English you will translate it as, let's say, something like, oh, I got up in the morning, I don't know, I washed my face and I ate breakfast and then went to school. In English it would be and. But in these languages you would put converb. You would use the converb to express a series of actions, and that is sometimes the sentences can get really long, and you have to, in translation, have to be able to break them down. Manchu has a lot of Mongolian and Turkic loan words, especially Mongolian, to a lesser extent Turkic, but modern Manchu has absorbed a significant amount of Chinese vocabulary, or very often in the form of calques. So the people who still speak Manchu, who are, I think the majority of these people are above 80 now, the logic of their sentences are very similar to Chinese. And indeed, like Chinese 成语, for example, are literally translated into Manchu. And also concept like, let's say, nuances in the verbs and so on and so forth. So it is a wonderful, wonderful mixture of Chinese, Mongolian, Turkic, if you like, and so on and so forth. Right. So these are the letters of the Manchu alphabet. I'm going to go through, because I'll ask you to say things during the actual course. And again, I'm not a native speaker, and there are very few native speakers left. I'm going to approximate the pronunciation of these phonemes, right? In terms of the actual letters, here's, well, you can have a look. Every letter has an isolated form, an initial form, a medial form, and a final form. Sometimes two variants for one form, because it's a Semitic script. So this would be, feel free to, because it's a workshop, don't just listen, feel free to sort of repeat. This would be a very good just What is written as what is transliterated in scholarship as a e is actually so it's a shuo, right? Which is similar to how Mongolians in China pronounce the e, the khalq, Mongol e sound. It's So this e, solid e, o, and that is a hard vowel. This u. This is very interesting. Actually, well, my teacher said that no one actually knows how to pronounce this. And in modern Manchu, it has merged with either of these two, but it's written differently. It's written as an o with a little e. So based on Mongolian philology and a bit of guessing, this would have sounded something like o. So probably in IPA would just be an o rather than an o. Again, in scholarship, very often people write the V to represent this sound, but I'm going to use in my later slides a U with a macron. So you can pronounce this any way you like, but not O, because they are different, and that affects the consonant. And this is only used in Chinese loanwords. So this is U, only used in Chinese loanwords, and the letter was later added to the alphabet. In terms of the consonants, this is N, as you know, and then we have an E. Manchu, like Mandarin, standard Mandarin that is, doesn't have voiced, like real voiced stops or consonants, let's say. So what would be transliterated as a g actually is a g, like the g in Italian or in Mandarin. So this is this transliterates as k in scholarship, but the pronunciation is k because very good, because of the shape of the letter. And that is a variant of this. That is the light variant of this. This is your normal k. Well, I shouldn't say normal. That's a very bad word. And this is either g or k or g or k or in between, transliterated as a g, as a g, right? H always has a bit of h sound. If you know Russian, you can pronounce that. It's neither h nor h. It's kind of in the middle in, let's say, reconstructed standard Manchu pronunciation. Some people would kind of use a bit of more force to pronounce it as a fricative, so h. But normally, I think it would be h. This is that demonstrates how what is considered in Latin script as a b, it actually pronounces b. And then this is your aspirated version, p. S is pronounced with more force. If you know Korean, you will know a lot of that's s, right? Rather than, especially at the start of the of a word. That's at least what I've listened to. This is actually incorrect because the sh is not a sh, it's a sh, like in Mandarin. This is relatively unproblematic. T, d, l, m, ch, j. This is the reason why. So at the beginning, at the start of my PowerPoint presentation, you see the native translated word for Manchu as written in Latin, Manju. That is why, because what is J is actually in IPA a J, so CH. That's why in English you say Manchu. It's actually not Manchu, it's Manchu, but English doesn't have J, so they can only write a J. Oh. This phoneme is now pronounced by native speakers, old native speakers, as a j, like in Mandarin. But I think originally it would be something like j, right? And yeah, no problem. A trilled or tapped r. This is a f. Manchu is full of f, which is also quite let's say, a bit unusual in the group of languages and languages that it's sort of related to, because we know Turkic doesn't really have f. What is f in modern Turkish is later deviation, and Mongolian doesn't have f, but Manchu is full of f. W or v is probably like the Spanish v. And then these are letters added to represent. Apart from this. This is a her. And the ц is later after to represent Chinese sounds, z as well, and zh. These don't really exist natively in Manchu. These sounds are the main sort of native sounds in Manchu. Right, okay, let's do a little bit of talking. I may need to ask Sola's help in terms of saying things correctly. I have modeled my pronunciation on the Mongolian that I've learned. So this is by no means native pronunciation. Later we'll learn a song and you can hear how that particular singer pronounces Manchu. He's one of the revived speakers and he adopts the Mongolian pronunciation for Manchu, but not quite as the one I'm doing at the moment. So hello is sayon. You can add sayon. This is actually a question, so which means good with a question mark. san, I suppose the Mongolian loan in Mongolian is also good. The bit, well, is a phonetic change if I have to explain. So it would be, this is good. And there's a question particle in a lot of these languages. When you ask a question, you have to have a particle. In Mandarin is ma, in Turkic is me, and in Manchu is o. And then that becomes here, and then that goes there. So it becomes. There are people who say sanyo, right? I have found example of people say sanyo. So sanyo, sano, or sanyo are all good. In Mongolian, what is it? Sambano. Zaman. So this is similar. If you know Central Asian Turkic languages, yaximsiz. In Uyghur, yaximsiz. Yaxshi is good. Musiz, are you good? Or yaximu. This is the same logic. Shinibe sano. Or shinbe sano. The shin, your, bear, body. San, good, no, question mark. 你的身体好 in Chinese. 心被生了 yeah. I have found conversations where nowadays native speakers, old people, they literally say 西san, which is 你好 in Chinese, so you good. Yeah, so this is the basic greeting. And then in response, because it's a question, you say san, which means good. Are you good? Good. Good? Good. All right? Like in British English, right? Right. She is very, san. The Manchu is usually stressed on the first syllable, which means, and then again, a secondary stress. Well, I shouldn't say this because that gets deleted. No, on the first syllable, which means that a lot of vowels after that get weakened or deleted. So it wouldn't say shi-san, shi-san, shi-san. Yes, the S in front of a I is pronounced as shi, as in Mandarin, not si. Right? There's a palatalization happening there, like in Korean. So this thing, right? This thing is the same as how Manchus pronounce that. Okay, so who's gonna do it? Israel. Personal pronouns. B. She. Tir. Bioch. Bioch Iskandarino. She. Shiweno. Who are you? Biochi Iskandarino. Shiweno. Yeah. So, as you can say, how do you say you now? If you're she, how do you say? So Manchu doesn't have gender. He, she, it. Be, she, tir. It has a far dietic in Manchu. So something that is next to you is which literally means that as well. Tir is something far from you. All translators are he, she, it. If you want to say they these days, that's fine. Manchu doesn't have this problem, so everyone is tir or Someone next to you would be If you want to say, oh, he, she, it is someone far, would be tir. Ochi is optional particle. It is the topicalization particle, such as watashi wa in Japanese, the wa in Japanese, which in Mongolian would be bot, right? Bot, be bot, Iskandar. And this also is where the Chinese shi sort of what the Chinese shi corresponds to. No, shi corresponds to inu, sorry. Inul, you can have it there. You don't have it there. It's fine. So you can literally just say bi Iskandar, or but if you want to be a bit more complete, bioch Iskandarin. This is a classical Manchu. If you look at phrase books, they don't always say this, but this is kind of a revived, reconstructed phrase. Next sentence. Mini or min, so the last vowel gets reduced. Literally, mini gabube Iskandar Sambi. You can say that with your name. Min, and then that gets shortened to min gawa something Sambi. Okay. Shingawa Asambi. Shingawa Asambi. Shingawa Asambi. Omshise. Shingawa Asambi. Shingawa Asambi. Irigawa Asambi. Irigawa Asambi. Exactly. Has everyone got it? Mini is my. Gabu is name. The b in the end is accusative ending, not always added. And Sambi means to call or to say. Literally, 你叫什么名字? The thing I said, Sambi is what, right? Or you can say Hulambi. Hulambi is the French appeler, so like you shout out to someone. So, comment tu t'appelles? Shingabu, Shingawa, Akhlambi, or Asambi, right? Or you can twist it around. Shin Agabuba ni shema minzi jiao. In Chinese, if you know Chinese, Shin Agabu Sambi or Shingawa Asambi. If you want to practice with your partner, or everyone's too shy, we go to the next one. Right. Now, yeah, you don't say I, you say Boom. Sorry? What did... Sambi. 你什么名字叫? Gabu or Goa in modern Manchu. Now, Sir or Hula. Shine. Xin Goa Jiao. Sir is to show, is to say. Egg. Xin egg of something. Xin a is what? Xin is your. Your what name? Call. They call. Literally, it's like that. Right, okay. Shingawa George Sambio. Shingawa Mingawa Asambi. Mingawa Asambi. Mingawa Iskandar Sambi. Mingawa Ahmad Sambio. Waka. Waka is no. Inu is yes. Inu literally translates into classical Chinese year. So something, something, something year. In classical Chinese, that's something, something is something. Which also means that Inu means also. So when you say, if you have two Georges, you ask each other, Bi Inu, me too. 我也, which year also means is. Oh gosh, running out of time. This is how you introduce yourself. A little bit further, where you're from, what you do, where you live, and so on and so forth. Bi dulimbe Jimbi. This is a literal translation of I come from somewhere. Dulimbe is China, the middle country. And Gojma Nikan Yalma Waka. Gojma is but Nikan is how the Manchus call the Chinese, so Han people. So hear the pronunciation, because the K is in front of the A, you say K rather than K. Bi Dulimbe Gurunch or Gurun Deri is from Jimbi or Chikha. Jimbi is Gojma Nikan Yalma Waka. Si Yawch Jimbi. Ya. Which one? Ba, place. Which place? In Persian, Kujo, right? In Chinese, Nali. Which place? Diri, from, Ochi, Jimbi, come. Si Yawa Nyalma Bifa. Which place person are you? Nali ren, if you know Chinese. Sorry? Kui Martik. Gurun is country, no? Alice. Si Yaudri Jimbi. Check. A lot of country names are not translated, so you just pronounce it as you pronounce in your native. Some, if you're from Japan, it's Nihon. If you're from Korea, it's Sorongo. If you're from Russia, it's Oros. And Oros. And the rest of the countries, you do it in your own way. Check. Diri Jimbi. Who can I pick? From. Post position. It's the same thing. Shiyawa Diri Jimbi. Hong Kong, Diri, or Chi, Jimbi. Or you can say Bi, Hong Kong, Nyalma. Nyalma is a person. That's it. Or Inu, I am a Hong Kong person, or I'm something person. Then, because we're at a polyglot gathering, you ask each other about the languages. Gisun, what does gisun mean? Language. As we have learned, is what or which. Si gisu gisurambi. Si gisu gisurambi. When you ask a WH question, you don't have the question mark. Or some people you use the Chinese ne, but okay. And then the answer would be something gisun, like be English gisun, gisurumbi, be Nikang gisun gisurumbi, be magic Czech gisun gisurumbi, magic. Lapdoako 랍도아코 마지크. Sorry? It is the denominal verb suffix. So that's used for generally to talk as well. The gisun is language, so gisura is to speak some language. Yeah. 시알 gisun gisurunbi. You can't just say Deutsch because, Deutsch, I've seen Deutsch for German. 시알 gisun gisurunbi. Milan Albert, 시알 gisun gisurunbi. Very good. What she said. So you have probably noticed that every present future tense verb ends in mbi, and that is actually a dictionary form. If you look at the Manchu dictionary, you're going to see verbs ending in mbi. That happens to be what is called the non-past tense, the present future tense. It designates future actions as well, and as well as like a sort of constant sort of present situation. We're not going to dig into tenses today because it's very, very complicated. If you then the negative of that is simply speaking, you put a r at the verb stem and you say ako. So that's you don't do something, right? I don't know. Nihon gisun gisuraku. Nihon gisun gisuraku. Solong Korean gisun gisuraku. Be Romanian gisun gisuraku. Shi'a gisun gisuraku. Gisuraku. So, Gojima Musa Gamu Manju gisun Tachimbi. Musa Gamu Manju gisun Echi Manju gisumba Tachimbi. We're all learning Manju language. And then, basic conversation, it goes to where are you from, where do you live? Usually nowadays people are not from a particular place. So you want to say where you live. B, London, Tumbi. Tur means to sit, and also that means to like a lot of Turkic languages. In Uyghur it would be men London da turme. Be London Tumbi. I sit in London, I live in London. She yaude Tumbi. She yaude Tumbi. Yawade. She Manchester that Tumbio. The Manchester Tumbia. She yaude Tumbi. Luxembourg de Tumbi. Umishse. She yaude Tumbi. London Tumbi. Be in London Tumbi. So de is the locative case, very much similar to, even though Japanese de and Turkish de. So this is that. We are kind of running out of time. Actually, no. Very quickly, I'm just going to go through this now. What is it and what is that, right? We have learned this and that. Well, this and that. Third person singular as well. Jaka is a thing. So if you want to ask what is it, Jaka ebicha. Jaka ebicha. Or Tirjaka. Or Tirjaka ebicha. Jaka is the Chinese, is a calque on the Chinese 什么东西. So a jaka is 东西, right? A thing. What this thing, what the 彼 is actually past tense. You use the past tense here because you're not really sure. You're asking a question, right? So ᡬᠰᠰᠠ 彼 is a book coming from the root bit, which means to write. And ino is optional. So ᡬᠰᠰ phi. It's a pen. In Chinese, it's bi. It's a Chinese word. Yes. That's how you ask each other what things it is. Manchu differs between existential copula and, let's say, to be copula. So when you want to say what is there, you actually have to say, or where you are, you actually have to say exist almost. Like in Turkish var. So there's a now musagumu kichembo the be. Kichembo, classroom. Kitchen, class, bo, house. Be is to exist. So we are all now in the classroom. And if you want to ask where, so the next sentence, kitchen border, ajakabi. Can people guess what this means? Kitchen border, ajakabi. Sorry? Exactly. In the classroom, what thing or things are there? You don't say ajaka ino, because that's a true statement. The B is there is, exists. In terms of numbers, we really don't really have the time, so we probably have to pass that. But if you want to learn how to count, Amu, Jua, Ilan, Dun, Sunja, Ningun, Nathan, Jakun, Oyun, Juan. And like a lot of so-called Altaic languages, the tens are, well, usually don't have a lot to do with the base numbers all the way until 60 or 70. So from 60 or 70, like in Turkish, from 60 on or 70 on, sometimes in some languages, the numbers start to have something to do with the base numbers. But here, for example, 20 is orin. It doesn't have anything to do with jua, right? But the verb, the number formation is very simple. It's not like in English, 12 who can just like 11 doesn't have anything to do with 1 or 10. But in Manchu, in Mongolian, in Turkish, so on and so forth. It's very easy. When you want to say 21, how do you say 21? Orinam, exactly. 59.
Down.
Exactly. 129. Exactly. This is literally it. We're gonna skip the time. Sorry, because time is not enough. Now, to wrap up, these are the case endings, the major case endings. These are the pronouns that we have trained before, and Manchu has exclusive we and inclusive we. Just like Mandarin Chinese, there's a difference between woman and zaman. Zaman is inclusive, and woman is exclusive. In Manchu as well, bi, be. If I have a friend here, be, but not you. Musa or mus is we're including. She is you. Sua is you plural, and that's plural, not term respective. Tir and tissa is they. And watch out for the endings, because these are the same endings used for nouns. So when you want to make something accusative, it's b. When it's genitive, it's e. And dative and locative are both de. And ablative would be ch, so from, right? In the pronouns, they are there are a few phonetic changes. For example, it's not bibe in terms of me. It's mbe, for example. But with nouns, you don't get these changes. So bitre is book. If I want to say, I'm reading a book, bitreb, hulambi. Hulambi is to read. Bitreb hulambi. And obviously with modern Manchu speakers actually say, for example, the accusative ending would be were because of phonological changes and all that. So people say bitroe hulambi. And the d gets reduced to d sometimes. And the e, you would hardly hear it. The ch gets reduced to ch only. Now I suppose we do a song. You have the lyrics. I'll explain the lyrics later. A lot of Chinese documentaries. Unfortunately, what's his name? He's got Chinese name like also Manchu name. I'll find it. Well, if you can find it as well. If you go on YouTube, he has the restored Manchu pronunciation. He's a heritage speaker. Manchu is by no means his first language. I watched this documentary and all that. He pronounces very, very well. And that is the kind of feeling of Manchu. Obviously, in North Asia, drinking is very, very important. And the stereotype in China is that people from Northeast China are very good at drinking and they never get drunk. And this is one of the... I'm not sure about the history of the song, whether that's a traditional one revived by him, or I think he composed it. He has composed many, many songs. If you're interested, come to after to ask. I'll give you the name of the author. Now, a bit on the nerdy side because we have 15 minutes, 14 minutes. Just gonna show, like, sort of explain the lyrics a little bit. This is a bit advanced of linguistics, has nothing to do with communication, just so you see how the language works. What I said about, let's say, agglutination and so on and so forth. Now, arc is alcohol or liquor. The genitive E, 우충 means song. So literally liquor's song. But as I said, the E is the genitive ending. It gets eaten by the ending of arc. So it's almost not written out here. And also in Manchu, you can put two nouns together, like in English, and the previous noun would modify the second noun. So alcohol, song, basically. Arki, so 白酒 in Chinese. A year is to flow. A yambi is to flow, but the r in the end is one of the converbs that changes the verb into a gerund. Muk is water. Flowing water is ayere muk. Water flows is muk rumbi. But flowing water is ayere muk. The E we see in the end is the genitive, and that is required by the adjective or adverb adle, which means similar. So something's similar, which means similar to something, right? Turiochi, we have learned it. That, so it. Qing is an expression which means like burning or something. Tua is fire. Gorgin means flames. So the fire's flames would be tua I gorgin, and when he was singing, the I is barely heard. Toy gorgin. Sen, good. Guchu is a friend, so you can call anyone Guchu. Se is the plural ending. Sen guchse, or guchs almost, he says. Sen guchs jidrab oktorde. Good friends coming or having arrived. Jimbi, as a be something jimbi, right? To come. This is literally, if you want to go very deep into linguistics, the entire phrase is a converb. We start from the end. The de there is at, and then we have oktoro. Oktorode is at the welcoming. So oktorombi is to welcome. At the welcoming of the bird is the accusative ending of the coming of the good friends. Literally, in order to welcome the arrival of good friends, Arki Huntran or Huntachn, he actually says Huntachn, which is, I think, is Huntran. Alcohol, chalice. So, jiubei in Chinese, Arki cups. Jalbumbi, I translate it in the passive tense, but it's actually a sort of causative. So, like, we cause the wine cups to be filled. Manchu very often, despite the fact that the verbs don't conjugate according to person, is very often a pro-drop language, like in Japanese, like in Chinese, like in Korean, I suppose. If the context is clear, you just say the verb, everyone knows who the actor of the verb is. So this poses problems with translation sometimes. Like, who here fills the cups? Well, obviously we. But if you want to go to details such as I, or then it's not important. Mujlun is heart. Shin mujlunit dolo. Dolo means inside. So your heart's inside me carries. No? Do you carry me inside in your heart? So directions usually are usually require the genitive case as well. In fact, and then the next one, Ming Muchlin Dolo Sim Topna Toge. He says Togna is the reverse. And Sachen is good. Guchlen comes from Guchu, friendship. Ijalu, for the sake of. This. Omichki. The chaki ending is hortative, exhortative. So let's drink this cup. The b would be accusative ending. So that is how the language works. And the chorus, omichki, omichki. So let's drink. Omicha mangi, mangi is at the time of. And here you have another converb that ends in ha, which happens to the past tense as well. So at the time of having drunk, utre, therefore, uchulki. Uchung is song, uchunbi is to sing, and let's sing. This is, well, how the language works. In terms of the last sentence, we only have 8 minutes. The last sentence of the chorus is a little bit more complicated. Banambi is to be able to or to succeed. Ako, as we have seen, is the negative. And the chi is if. So if cannot, literally, can, not if you can't. Omi summer. Omi is omimbi, we have seen a lot, is to drink. Omi, it would be the imperative. Summer is diye in Turkish. I don't know how to explain this. Kırılırcı. You will already be punished. The literal translation would be, if you cannot do it, you will already be punished by us saying drink. And that's a lot of times how to if I had to do this in Turkish, it would be so easy. Like iç diye şey. And this is also modo how this language works. The next, let's say, 6 minutes, if you have any questions. Do we have the Slido? Let's do Slido. What does that mean? Why Qing out of so many syllables they could have chosen? I don't know what that means. Sorry, can we do the next question, please? Or maybe Qing, I don't know actually. I don't know why the country. I'm not a Qing historian. I'm more of a, let's say, historian linguist of the Persianate world, but I have no idea. But in terms of the name Manchu itself, it is not a historical name for the people, as we have seen. They used to be called Mohe by the Chinese, or probably a self-designation as well, and then very famously Jurchen, right? And it was Nurhaci actually, who was the first emperor of the Qing Empire, who changed some Tungustic speakers or Manchu speakers, let's say, group name to Manchu. There are wild guesses as to what Nurhaci was thinking when he invented the word Manchu, but one of the guesses being, if you know the Middle Chinese or let's say Cantonese pronunciation of a particular bodhisattva, in Chinese with a Wenju Pusa, the Manju something, right? If you know that, as a particular name of a particular bodhisattva in Chinese would be this bodhisattva, and that would be pronounced as man, and that would be pronounced as Jew. it was chosen to name the Manchu people, but I'm not really sure. But in terms of Qing, unfortunately, yes. Does Manchu have passive verb constructions? Of course it does have. It has passive, let's say, verb ending which denotes interaction. And yeah. How does the Chinese government feel about the revitalization? Doesn't feel about anything, to be honest, because the Manchus don't have, let's say, like a sort of so-called separatist claims of the. So no. Do Manchu and Mongolian have the same sentence? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely the same sentence structure. Do you have some examples of Manchu loan words in Chinese? Oh, yes. Usually in Northern Mandarin, in, let's say, Beijing dialect, for example, geda. In Dongbei, let's say Northeastern Chinese Mandarin, the word geda means a place. 你住哪儿? Geda, well, I can't imitate it, but that's Manchu gada, which means a place. Ai gada. And also a very famous sort of dessert called sachima, which is I think in the Soviet world it's called chak. I think who hears that's very much consumed in China, and that has a Manchu name. Is Shiba something like spoken? It is a spoken form of Manchu, and it's very actively spoken, but it's a dialect of Manchu. Some people say it's a dialect of Manchu, some others say it's a successor to Manchu, but they are very similar to each other. Do Manchus write in Manchu script to teach each other usually in Chinese? Well, most Manchus don't speak the language. So I would imagine those who do, they would either write in pinyin-ized form or the script. No, Tibetan is not related to Manchu. Tibetan is related to Chinese. Voila. That's all. Thank you very much for coming.